On the hybrid water heater, there's two main parts. The upper part, which is the heat pump, and the lower part. The lower part has our two elements, our thermostats, and our tank. This lower part works almost exactly like a standard residential electric water heater. So, when we're diagnosing, problem solving, or repairing anything on the lower part, we're going to do that exactly like we're working on a regular water heater, a regular residential electric water heater. So, we're going to cover a few things today. We're going to go into draining and flushing the water heater. We're going to remove the upper thermostat. We're going to look at the thermistor. We're going to look at the element. We're going to do the same thing on the lower. And I'll give you a couple tips that'll help you get through that. Let's start with draining the water heater. Now, this water heater has a leak sensor, so we're going to put down some paper towels to prevent that from getting wet. And go ahead and connect our hose to the lower drain on the water heater. And it just needs to be hand tight. Once you get that connected, you can take the other end of the hose and run that to an outside location that is safe. And by safe, I mean an area that's not going to spray hot water on grass or plants, animals, or people. Flathead screwdriver, and it's just going to be a quarter turn to turn that water heater on. Now, if there's pressure in the tank, it will blast out the end of the hose. This water heater is not very old, it doesn't have any sediment buildup, and the water will just start to flow out. Now, at some point, we're going to go ahead and need to allow air inside of the tank so the water can continue to come out. There's a couple ways to do that. One is to pop the T&P open. Air will enter the tank that way. And as you can see, the water is coming out a little bit faster now. Another way to allow air inside of the tank is to go to the closest faucet. All you need to do is turn the handle over to the hot side and turn it on. That'll allow air inside of the line and into the tank, and the water will flow freely from the drain. When you're finished, you just need to shut that off. To access our lower element, just going to remove the lower cover. This is held in with two screws, and they are Phillips head drive. And go ahead and pop that insulation out of the way. This water heater already has the power off. When you're working with these water heaters, remember to go ahead and disconnect power before you do anything. Before we started with this water heater, I made sure that the power was completely disconnected. If there's any doubt about the water heater not having power, go ahead and get your multimeter out and just check. It's always good to double check. No power, so we're good to go. Now, to access the upper element, it's the same thing. Two Phillips head screws. Go ahead and remove those. Your panel will come off. Pop the insulation out. Remove the plastic cover, and there you have it, your upper thermostat, the thermistor, and the element. We're going to check and make sure we do not have any power. This is the upper part of the thermostat where the power comes in from the top, and then the lower part. If power is supplied through the breaker, the upper part will have power. If the ACO is tripped, the lower part will not have power. And you can check the ECO if you suspect it's tripped by pushing the red button. Okay, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the two leads off of the element. And you can gently bend those out of the way. Get your multimeter set up. We're going to ohm this out. We're going to look to make sure that we have continuity through the element. There you go. You simply do that by touching each lead to the post on the element and get your reading. Now we're going to look for a grounded element by touching the post on the element with one lead, and the other one we're going to tap around on the tank in the outer part of the threaded area of the element. Make sure that it's not grounded. Now if we did suspect the element needed to be cleaned or removed, we would go ahead and do that with our socket, our element socket. I'm going to twist that counterclockwise and work that element out. Now these elements do have a loop in them where they move forward and then they curve backwards. That makes it a little bit difficult to get them out. You may have to try a couple of different angles. You don't want to force it out. You'll damage the element and make things a lot harder on you. It is sometimes difficult to be able to hold the element with your fingers to get the threads to match up, but once you get it, go ahead and give it a few turns with your hand, and then you can tighten it up with your socket wrench. When the element's tight, it's going to be pretty much in the same orientation as when you took it out. So the wires will typically line right back up, and you can get those back in. Here we're going to remove the upper thermostat. On this hybrid model, there's going to be 4 wires. Loosen up or remove the 4 screws. You can do that however you'd like. Now the upper thermostat is held on by a clip. You can use a screwdriver to help pull those tabs back to get that upper thermostat out. Disconnect any wires that you may need to. This is the thermistor wire. And there you have it, it's out. The thermistor is there in the back. The upper part is the thermostat. If you need to change that thermistor, it'll just slide right out of the bottom and you can install a new one. I believe these come as one piece, but I could be wrong. To reinstall, you just push it right up against the tank and slide it down into the tabs, and it'll click into place. Again, just go ahead and reconnect your wires. Once you're satisfied, you can go ahead and reinsert your plastic cover and your insulation and put the cover back on the outside of the water heater with your 2 Phillips head screws. Now the lower part of the water heater is very similar. We do have a couple more connections. This particular water heater has a leak guard and a leak sensor. To remove the leak sensor, you just simply unclip the wire from the harness. And you can gently slide that right out. Easy as can be. Now if you're replacing or just inspecting this wire, you can do so and reverse the process to reinstall it. Push back into the tube and push the sensor all the way back down in there. It doesn't take much force. If you're having to really put a lot of force on it, try holding pressure a little bit closer to where it inserts into the tube and you'll get it right back down in there. This particular sensor did not give me any problem at all. It went right back into position and we can reconnect it. The other connection is going to go to our valve. We can just disconnect that. And we're going to check this lower element. We'll check the lower element for proper ohms. We'll go and make sure it's not grounded, and then we'll remove it and do a visual inspection. Element looks good. A little bit of deposit buildup. Go ahead and clean that off with my finger, and I'll go ahead and reinstall the element. Again, when you put this in there, it has a tendency to drop down at the end and be at a weird angle, so you're going to have to use your hands to position that properly to get it to start to thread in there. Once it threads in, give it a couple turns with your hand and you should be good to go to tighten it with your socket. Next, we're going to remove the lower thermistor and check that. This thermistor is clipped in there behind the black plastic panel next to the element, and it will slide right out. This one took a little bit of convincing, but it did come out. And you unclip that from the main wiring harness, and there you have it. Now you're going to want a real fine needle point tip to fit inside of this plug for the thermistor. But once you do, you'll start to read the ohms, and you can rub the thermistor to warm it up and look for the change in the ohms. Now we're going to warm this thermistor up, and you're going to see that the ohms are going to drop. And once you're complete with your thermistor inspection, or if you're replacing it, you can simply slide it back into position, reconnect it. Make sure you reconnect your wire for your valve. Any other wires that were disconnected, make sure that you have a good, tight, positive connection on all of those. Element should be tight. And again, fill the water tank up and pressurize it and check for any leaks before you reassemble the water heater. Now, like I said, this particular water heater does not have any power to it. It also does not have any water. So we're going to go ahead and button it up. The bottom cover does have an area for the wire to exit the cabinet. So just make sure that that's lined up properly when you tighten up your lower panel. You don't want to pinch and damage that wire. Now remember, once you have your elements in, your wires connected, your valve off at the bottom, you're going to go ahead and turn your water on and start filling your tank. As you're filling your tank, you can check for leaks before you put these covers on. Go ahead and go to a hot water faucet, turn the water on, and bleed all that air out of the tank. Shut it off when you get a solid stream of water, check for any leaks, put it all back together, and you're good to go. Once you're all set, reapply power, everything will be hunky-dory. Go ahead and grab yourself your favorite bowl of queso and wait for your water to get hot.